Hey, coaches, you hear a lot of talk about being player centered and getting input from players, but how do you actually make that happen? This episode is about what if permissions. We dig into practical ways you can pre agree with players and your fellow coaches on how you intend to respond to challenging situations. I'm Simon Turner. Together with Mark, Bennett, and Alan Keane, we've teamed up to bring you the Don't Tell Me, Show Me podcast. This is episode 5. Okay, Mark, Alan, we're on the eve of the European Championships for you, Alan. So this is like a live coaching session for you. This is what you could call it an advanced therapy to help you navigate the ups and downs of the European Championships. Hopefully, you won't get food poisoning this year. So we're going to go through some kind of scenarios that you don't know about. So Mark and I are going to throw these at you over the course of this episode. So I think this could be really good for coaches because it helps. This type of thinking can help a coach to prepare for unusual situations and to really anticipate what might happen and therefore get a head start on what their responses are. So this can help coaches to feel a greater sense of control over their coaching, particularly in game situations. But we need to tee this up. So, Mark, tell us about what ifs, permissions, like how does this fit in?
So, short version, the what if permissions is a way to future-proof potential situations that can be coming up to ensure everyone understands their role when those situations do arise. It's non-hierarchical. So what I mean by that is an athlete could seek these from a coach to coach, a coach to a manager, to a director. It makes no difference. It's not just coach to athletes. So in essence, a what if is based on our previous experiences or speaking to someone that's been in a certain situation. So Alan's, for an example, for Alan's, he's had experience at the Europeans. He's also a bit of a sponge. He always watches others and asks other coaches that have been in certain situations. So what you're looking at there is you're looking at in past experiences, what are the elements that could happen that isn't just A, B, C. It's something that come from the side that can happen that could influence our performance or our decision or agreements at the time. So let's discuss them now. So we've got a clarity of who does what in these situations. The permission fits into who can call it, who's in charge of it, and if you do call it, what are my actions if you call it, or what is someone else's actions if you call it. So where this really helps a lot of organizations, sports, is sometimes we plan how we're going to plan sessions. We know when matches are coming up. We know the common situations about selection, but there are situations that arise that we know if we can start thinking ahead and think about what if these situations happen, what would we do, what would we choose? It allows us to think ahead. So when we come to that situation, we're not as stressed. We have a common agreement of, okay, we knew this was coming. We've discussed it. We know what to do in this moment. And you may have some subtle nuances, but it just helps you prepare. Back to your great words. It's not about planning. It's about preparation, the difference between the two.
Mm-hmm. Well, it looks like Alan's dog, Leo, has got permission, feels he has permission to interrupt the podcast at any time. So that's we're already on the first what if scenario. What if the dog interrupts the podcast? Just roll with it. So Alan, to set up some of these what ifs, can you first talk about permissions? Because who you permit to do what is going to help you decide what you might do in those what ifs. Would that
Can I throw a question scenario, Simon, at Alan? Then it's contextual. So again, I'm not saying Alan does this, but he has shared that sometimes it happens. So Alan, situation in a match, you're aware there are times when you may get caught up emotionally in the situation. So a what if may be, and this is where permission comes in, what are you going to do to ensure that in that situation you have people around you that can recognize it and have an intervention to allow you to be more successful if either you can't regulate it or you're not aware of it?
So I've got a new coaching staff with me this year, Mark. this year with me, Simon. They're new. I've not worked with these two assistant coaches before, and the TM and the performance analyst, and also the S&C. The only one I've worked with previously is the physio. So I've had to spend time. This might sound egotistical. I've sent them podcasts I've been on that explains why I coach the way I coach, and I said to them, I'm at risk here of being very egotistical, but I'd like you to listen to this podcast before we come into camp, because I think it'll give you a feeling and it'll give you a sense of how I coach and what I value around coaching. On one of those podcasts,
like episode 1 of the Don't Tell Me, Show Me podcast.
It was exactly that. It was episode 1 of this podcast. Yeah, I won't repeat it because you got it wrong week 1. I don't want to get it wrong this week.
Yeah, we're work in progress.
Work in progress. But Mark, for me, it was important. It was very important for me, and it will continue to be regardless who I work with, when I work with them, to help them understand who I am and my lowlights. I'm not just sending them the highlights. I want them to know the lowlights. I don't need them to know the highlights. I don't need support and help when things are going great. It's when I'm not at my best self and I'm not, managing my state. That's when I need the support. So, step 1, give them an insight into who I am and give it all. Don't hold back. I'm not trying to impress anyone. I'm trying to get them to understand who the real me is in difficult moments. And like every other human on the planet, I have slippage. So after that, a conversation around, right, how can you guys support me to be my best? And, conversation there leads on to me explaining to them what I need from them. So for me to be at my best, it's a process we do with the players, Mark. We do a similar process with the players. I won't get into it because it'll detract from this topic in this conversation. But it's a similar process we do with players. I share with them what I think my strengths are, but I also share with them what I think my weaknesses are. And I share with them when I think my weaknesses arise, and I share with them what I've recognized over the years, what are my triggers. Mark, in the past, I've showed video. It's not a big. It sounds like, oh, that's a big effort. It's not a big effort. I've showed video of me on the sideline, acting emotionally, acting like a child at times, in fact. And I've gone, here's me in certain moments, and I want you to help me not get there, because me at my best will allow us to perform at our best. And we have a conversation around what type of support do I need, and I can get into that in a moment. But that's the starting point.
So this will be where you fit in the permissions. And the example you've used there, Alan, is so critical, because it's very common, especially if they're a confident, experienced coach that's held in high regard, a head coach, for assistant coaches to know, I think, head coach, you're wrong in this moment. And I'm not going to share it with you right now because I don't want to be shut down, or I don't feel it's appropriate because you're more experienced than me. I'm junior. So in that example is actually letting them know, look, in these situations, I need you, if you disagree with me in these particular moments and situational share, I need you to share what you're thinking, just qualify and quantify it.
I'm going to jump in there because I just want to respond to that, because I know you're going to take this in more rich places. But that starts, Mark, in the preparation. Yeah. Like, if I go through camp, I go through these 16 practice sessions we have, or 20 plus practice sessions we have, and I'm the dominant voice all the time, and they're just on the sideline. Then actually it's difficult to go there. So in order to go there, in all these practice sessions, I tell them all the time, you're the head coach. You're the head coach of your role. And when you're leading this 30-minute segment of practice, I'm your assistant coach. You're the head coach of these 30 minutes. So in effect, you're the lead coach. I become the support coach. I become the assistant coach. I constantly refer to the physio as the head coach. He's the head coach of the physiotherapy department of what we need. These S&C, he's the head coach of the S&C, and so on, so on, so on. But this starts, you can't just flip a switch here and give somebody permission, a week before European Championship. Oh yeah, you can pull me up if you think I'm being an idiot on the sideline or I'm being demonstrative, which I've done in the past, and that has been done. Coaches have been good at pulling me back. But you can't just switch that on. You have to build up to that, and it starts in the training camp by transferring ownership or shifting the dial from them being the leader and you being the follower for their area of delivery, and actually fulfilling the assistant coach's role in those moments.
So there's two elements to that, Alan. One is everyone recognizing that that's a skill, and like any other skill, when the pressure isn't on, we make sure it's agreed and people commit to it, and then we make sure we react effectively to an intervention from others. That's key. But also understanding that although people may do that in practice, is understanding many people, whether it's players, assistant coaches, may think, oh, but we're in competition now. Now the pressures, oh, this coach is now more stressed, more dominant now than before. Oh, I'm not sure if I should do it then. So it's a critical area for everyone to understand. Look, these are commonalities that is going to impact performance. So yes, we need to practice them, and I need to honor my side, whoever that is, but also making sure we're really explicit to say, look, nothing's changing right now, guys. In fact, we may be getting it turned up. So it's even more important you do those things. If I can just link another example question to you, Alan, on that,
sure.
Is let's look at a hardware one. So technical, tactical skill, person, athlete. Imagine, so a what if question may be, you've got some key athletes that are some of your dominant, higher capable, whether they're influencers on court or judgment or capacity players, that you're preparing for. Actually, is the volume of load for them in a tournament? Where's our rotation? How are we preparing for rotation? How do we know when the rotation comes in? Because now we're looking at what ifs from your physio, obviously, as well as influencers. So do you want to share that as a thinking ahead what if for?
Sure. So, well, you've given me three responses, Mark. If I can go with three, we won't call it the rule of three because that's something different.
Yeah, it's very different.
I don't make subs. I transferred complete ownership. Simon will be used to this because he's assisted me for a number of years, and I've asked the coaches, are you comfortable taking complete ownership of making subs? Like, so if we're talking about permission, I'm giving them permission to accept it, because if they're not comfortable with it, then it's a different conversation.
It also, Alan, sorry to interrupt, but that permission sets up a response to a what-if situation, which is European Championships. Teams are in hotels. They're coming from all different countries. Bugs go through those hotels. I mean, law of averages, one of these years, you're going to get a vomiting bug and just not be able to coach the game today. And if you've been taking responsibility for everything, all the decisions, then and somebody's got to step in and replace you, then making substitution decisions will be one of the most stressful things that person has to do and to step up. Whereas that permission has led you to a solution to a what if.
Can
Absolutely.
I just ask starting lineups?
Sorry, Mark?
The starting lineups, is that a combination discussion with all coaches?
Combination discussion with all coaches, and an agreement amongst all three coaches. We then obviously bring the strength and conditioning coach and the physio coach in to give information around health and well-being and physical readiness in particular. But then once we get in the course of the game and the ball is thrown up, Mark, every sub after that is made by the two assistant coaches who have planned and thought out and planned for scenarios, planned for combination capabilities based on opposition. So this is a well thought out. This is a really detailed plan by those coaches, knowing that they may have to adapt that plan because of things get thrown up in the course of a game, fouls, fatigue, injuries, whatever. So, yeah, during the course of the game, I don't make the subs, and you're right, Simon, it does tee them up to step over, move 6 inches over to that seat should I not be there. But also, there's so many positives to it. One, I have more bandwidth to focus on what's happening on the court. I don't have to put my attention to, right, this player needs to come out, right, who do we bring in? Or let me go back to the plan, the substitution pattern plan that we planned for. We could still follow because there's no curveballs yet. So it frees me up of that. I have more space to engage with players. I have more space to scan. I've got more energy to be more methodical about identifying threats and opportunities. Like, this is a real benefit for me as a coach. I haven't made a sub in 3 years. Like, I've been doing this on the national team for 3 years now, and in the club for 3 years. And now I may turn around at any point in time and go, hey, Simon, I think Mark looks really tired. Like, I may make a point of view, and I've often done that with Simon and gone, look, right, he's picked up 2 fouls. I'd encourage you to leave him out there. I may have that conversation. But again, I'm suggesting as an assistant in that position. So the subs is one, Mark. The tactics is the other. The other permission is a lot of our assistant coaches. Assistant coaches a lot of time will design the scout report. They will scout the opposition. They will come up with the tactics. They will come up with the player tendencies, the style of play, and all that stuff. I have, and Simon, you've seen this. I think Movement might have published a video a couple of years back. I've handed the whiteboard, the tactics board, and the marker over to an assistant coach in a timeout in key moments of the game, saying, right, you know what they're going to draw up, you take the time out, and they step in and they do it. But that's pre-agreed, Mark. That's not putting somebody on the spot. I'm throwing no curveballs in these moments. In the heat of a battle, that's all pre-agreed. That's all understood that it would arrive to that point. And then the third, I said I'd give you 3. The third one is the strength and conditioning coach and the physio. Making decisions, allowing them to make decisions on, or have an input, take a lead on, informing us as coaches to the physical well-being of these athletes, and then telling us what the RPE for this session should be. Telling us this should be no more than a 7 in terms of a rate of perceived exertion. The loading should be no more than a 6. This player, you need to be better coaching him because he slept 4 hours last night. So if you're putting him on a team, he needs a sub on his team in practice. So again, I'm following their lead. They have permission to lead me in order to make better decisions, in order for us to fulfill our potential.
And I guess getting into that in the European Championships, when you've got a lot of games, is you guys planning ahead to say, well, what if this player, who's one of our high minute players, is injured? Are we making sure we have capability combinations that can start, that are confident? Are we preparing for that? As opposed to, no, everything will be great and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, which I've seen happen.
I'm laughing, Mark, because we literally did it 2 days ago. And you know what? We're not done. It's like draft number 4.
Yeah.
Like we're being quite forensic with that because that's a reality. I've done, this might be my 15th European Championship, I believe. And I've come across that every time. Player goes down with a sprained ankle, that's your starting point guard. Or 4 fouls in the first half, or 3 fouls in the first periods, everything changes. So we've got, if I share the document online here, it'd be like, cricket score sheet. It's got so much information on it because we're planning for those scenarios. But the assistants are really taking a strong lead in that. I'm following their lead. I'm inputting, my information, but they're really nailing this. It's really great to see.
Now, I know there's another element. This is a permission one, Simon Moore, but again, we're still thinking ahead. I know you do this, Alan, and everything we're talking about has to be prepared in practice. It's never something new in competition, but we've discussed that already on others. Is making sure that every athlete has permission that if you're putting a tactical play, a principle in during the tournament or any time in practice, but particularly when we move into the tournament, is athletes have the confidence to say, coach, I'm not comfortable with this. I think this would be better. Knowing that I'm putting this out there because this is an important one that I hear a lot of coaches say that. Can you share with why you need that from the athletes, but also why you're still in charge of making the decision, but you don't want athletes in their head thinking, I can't do this, I don't think it's right, and nodding at you? The reason why you need that live feedback, you need that permission to go, you need to say these things in these moments.
I've learned the hard way with this. I can recall times, and I can probably go back and find some, Mark. I've recorded my timeouts since 2014. I have almost 10 years of timeouts recorded at European Championships. And, there's some of them I could go back there and I've been the dominant voice. I've been the only voice, and I've been very prescriptive. This is what we're doing. I'm the expert in this team. I'm the expert in this domain. I've identified that they're going to do this, so we're going to do that. And players, and I've set the players up to fail because I've asked them to do, and I've drawn up something that we've never worked on, and that's the cycle. You got to go through that process. You learn the hard way sometimes, and I definitely did in that space. Mark, if you were to sit in our timeouts next week at the European Championship, at some point in time, you would definitely hear me say to the players in the timeout, what are you thinking? What's the opportunity that you guys are seeing on the floor right now, and how could we exploit that? And it's literally like, no, not everyone speaks up in these moments, Mark, but the leaders in the group will very quickly identify they're switching screens. We can exploit it from the outside because we got speed, we got pace, but we need to stretch the floor. Coach, I think we should run ghost. I think we should run this action, that action. You would 100% be part of that if you were sitting in the timeouts next week. Because, Mark, the reality is this. I sit on the sideline. And it's the angle just take the basics. The angle I'm looking at is not what they see. I'm looking that way, they're looking this way when they play offense, when they play defense. So first of all, I don't see what they see as much as I think I can. I don't feel what they feel. And, I want to know what they're seeing. I want to know what they're feeling in order for me to have as much information as I can have to make a better choice, to make a better judgment. So if I don't embrace their thoughts and feelings, I limit the choices I can make. But again, something
they don't know what you know. You don't see what they see. You don't feel what they feel, but they don't know what you know. So that's the sort of magic, isn't it? Like that's where you can add value to their decision making by having this kind of back and forth relationship with them, where they've got permission to engage with you, but also they've given you permission to coach them.
Great formula you've just come up with. So, Simon, you're the player, I'm the coach. What you see, what you feel, plus what I know equals the action. If that's the formula and you can get there quick and efficiently because you've worked on that in practice, I think that's a great equation in terms of making choices as a coach.
And we're back to that point of we develop athletes that aren't confident under those stress situations, to be honest. We're just kind of guessing. It's as if they've got a whiteboard. They're writing all their thoughts on this page, but we can't see it. And we're going, okay, we're going for this. And they're going, okay. And so that's, if you look at it, it's madness. But again, if you haven't developed that as a part of the culture and environment in practices, but understanding when Europeans might be some of your players, you've got 2 assistant coaches, that's a different level of pressure, and we don't yet know, or you do or don't, I don't know the answer to that, is how they will react once we're under this pressure. Are you still going to honor what we did before, or now if you pull back a couple of steps in your flow, in your commitment, in you saying things, thinking things? And that's where that, again, if we look at coaches, that's where that what if, where we have that conversation, especially if they're newer coaches, go, look, what we're doing now, we still need to do. And then start scanning for if they're starting to be a bit more quiet or they're starting to make different decisions or communicating, you having those interventions then and go, hey, remind me what we agreed. Just do that now. You've got this. I'm backing you. Keep doing that in those moments.
So, Mark, take that process, and that applies from the assistant coaches to the coaches, head coach. And Simon gave a great example with me this year, and he's done it often. We shared a video. And I wasn't coaching the way I planned to coach. So he checked and challenged me in the change room before we walked back out into the court. And it was the recalibrate, it was the realignment I needed. Yeah. But Simon had permission to do that. Simon and I had discussed that previously. Now I think the challenge for my assistant coaches next week going into the heat of battle, will they step up to the plate even though we've agreed it? Because that's not easy to do. And you know what it's like when you've seen head coaches. And I'm aware my shadow can grow quite big. My posture, my voice can get quite firm. In those moments, will they step up to the challenge? I don't know. They don't know. We'll have fun finding out.
Now,
I have a question for you.
Let me just, before you do the question, I think it's an important point here. And I was waiting for you to get to it, Alan, but you're there. It's like we planned this, but we haven't really rehearsed. Don't forget, same as when we're having athletes, even if we agree something in a classroom, I remember we talked about building the culture, but then we remind them by questioning them before a session. This applies to coaches in tournament. So we've agreed it in practice, we've shown it in practice, but we're thinking this is still going to be new. The pressure's increased. This is my awareness as head coach. So before I go into that match, I say to the coaches, remind me your role to me. Remind me what we agreed that we're going to do. Remind me of our permissions. Okay, let's go for it. So it's kind of that reconnection with, I know we've said it ages ago, but coaches saying right before we start, this still applies. I still need this from you. Still go for it, which is going to help them reconnect to the permission and more likely honor it in those moments. And it's that refresh check. So important.
Yeah, the reconnection. This is something you worked with me quite strongly on for years. Reconnecting to the purpose, reconnecting to what we agreed, reconnecting to the success criteria. There's a lot of reconnecting, because you're absolutely right. And it's something probably that doesn't get talked about, or we don't emphasize enough, even us three. In the course of a game, you get swept along. The emotions, the scoreboard, the referee, the context of things that happen that you didn't expect, curveballs, and then we stop reconnecting. I think giving your assistant coaches a role of make sure we stay reconnected to these 5 things is your role for this game could be really powerful. Mark, question for you. So what do you say to the coach who has 20 years experience at the highest level, let's say in EuroLeague or NBA, that says, I don't need to give permission because I'm experienced. I've seen this before. I've been here before. I've done it again and again and again. They'll get to the outcome faster if I just tell them I don't need to give them permission to do this. I'll get them there quicker. What do you say to that, coach?
Is that to their assistant coaches or to the athletes?
Well, it's to the head coach who's saying to you.
But is he saying that meaning his assistant coaches, or
meaning
is he saying that meaning his athletes?
His athletes.
So all you do, it's back to, I get this quite commonly when I first go in, Alan, is go, right, I would always say, I don't know the answer to that, but let's get some video evidence that we can review against. Let's see, and let's, before we look at the video, let's pre-agree what we're looking at and what's successful and not successful. A great one, and in most of the team type sports this has happened, is, and I do it in practice as well, is I say, okay, so let's agree that we're scanning for, and I always do it with something I've done before. So we need to prime it so they're not filtered. I get video footage from all where I can hear their voice and what they're saying and the actions after. And then say, okay, let's pre-agree what success is within the conversations and making sure they're aware of that not being out of date. That what they say athletes will apply and it's successful. So then once we've pre-agreed, we look back at that video and we look at enough of a trend and we're saying, okay, you said this here. Tell me if it was successful. For how long for? So then we start seeing a lot of no's. They didn't do what I said. Okay, when we came back in, where was the connection with that? So they haven't. Did we spot it at the time? And if they didn't, what did you say about it? Or did you just give them new information? I just gave them new information. Okay. So we go down this journey. So based on that, would you say that's successful? Or would you say, actually, there could be an area for development there? There could be an area for improvement, enhancement. Because now we're using referencing to say, actually, I haven't even looked at it like that before. I'm so caught up in the game. I'm realizing now I'm saying stuff, they're not doing it. But I'm then letting them not do it and just give them more information. And then they start going, actually, well, that's unacceptable based on what I want. And then we can open the dialogue to, okay, let's explore ways that may enhance that. Let's explore ways that could we get athletes to be sharper or quicker. Another example, Alan, is they see athletes, some of them doing it, but within 3 minutes, it's out of date because the opposition has changed, or sometimes immediately. But we can't see those athletes adapting. And even with the coach shouting on the sideline, we're not seeing the adaptation. So then we look at that and say, okay, is that successful based on the level of performance we want to play? No. Okay, so what do we want from the athletes? I need them to see that adaptation from the opposition and change. Okay, are they doing that now? No. Is that something we need to work on? Yes. So the strategies we're using now are not successful in developing that. Great. Would you be open for looking at other strategies? Okay, yes, I would. And now we start making the connection. So it's about using the evidence and pre-agreeing what's successful or not, and then looking at that evidence and starting that dialogue. Because you can talk for 3 hours to an athlete or a coach that has that belief, and you're still going to walk away disagreeing. But if you've got data that's real, that isn't filtered, and when you're pre-agreeing what is success before you look at the data, now we have a dialogue.
Okay, another what if, Alan. Let's change tack a little bit here. What if a good player in your team who's culturally powerful, socially powerful within the group, doesn't support some of your methodologies, isn't fully, let's say, bought in. I actually hate that expression, but for lack of a better expression right now, they haven't brought in. They're not fully supportive of your culture. Maybe you're losing, and that person is simultaneously really important to you turning around your performances on the court and a cause of some of the kind of social and cultural issues that are actually starting to undermine the team's performance. So you could, on one hand, sort of cut them off and just go with the other group, and so that you can protect the culture that you're trying to develop within that group, but then that might undermine your on-court performances. You're trying to bring them back in. Like, that's quite a nuanced, skillful kind of situation. How do you approach that?
Well, what I don't do is avoid it, Simon. It's not something I run away from. I run towards these things, and you've been around me long enough now to know those difficult moments, they're inevitable. They happen on every team, national team, domestic team, at some point. If you haven't had it as a coach, it's coming for you. You keep staying it long enough, it's coming. Mm-hmm. I step towards it, and I step toward. When I say I step towards it, it means I acknowledge it's happening, and I try to gather as much information as I can in order to take the right approach. So in previous years, I've reached out to parents of these people. I've asked them, is everything okay? This is what I'm experiencing. Is there something I'm not aware of? Because very often, Mark, when or Simon, when that happens, it's often nothing to do with you as the coach. It's got nothing to do with you. It's actually a contribution to other things going on in their lives, that they're behaving a certain way. And when you have that information, the acceptance of that behavior becomes a lot easier, and you stop blaming the person, and you stop feeling negative about the person.
What if you've got a game at 11 a.m. tomorrow?
So you're talking right now, heat of the moment. Somebody's kicked off in a video session tonight, had a disagreement, told I don't agree what we're doing.
It's been bubbling. It's been, team's not been performing very well. It's been bubbling up. And now we're in this scenario where, what if this person just checks out in the game tomorrow?
Well, if it's in the heat of the battle and they're checking out, I wouldn't pull them, Mark. I think the easy thing to do, or Simon, the easy thing to do is just pull them and not play them. I would have a conversation. But there's a line in the sand. There's a line where you have to make a decision. What's best for the team right now? But that would be after an attempt to engage that person, to connect with them, and connect through questions, not connect through telling. Maybe give them more space, but still flight path coaching. Find a moment to praise something they did, prompt them, and walk away to leave. I would try to make these connections. If that connection wasn't happening, Simon, and it was at the detriment of the team, then I would have to put the team first. I would sit the player, put the team first, but then I would try to deal with that situation post-game later on that evening, next day, and meet with the player and try to get to the bottom of what's going on and see can we find a resolution.
I think there's a key point to this, though, because you use the words it's bubbling over. If you're developing the right culture, you would spot this, and if you didn't spot it, other players would spot it and start putting the intervention, and if they couldn't manage it, they'd speak to one of the coaches. And this is back to from day one when we talked about that, when the new team comes in, is making sure that is fundamentally underpins everything we do. So I'd like to think you wouldn't get a bubbling over in Alan's team, but you may get somebody that actually is submissively going along, but in their head they're starting to question for whatever reason, I'm not performing as well. Is it something we're doing? Blah, blah, blah. And then you start to sense something's changed in them. Something's not firing out. Now, at that point, again, players should spot it and have an intervention coach. And if the coach can't see it, the players can say, Sarah's acting a little bit. She's going in herself a little bit. We're not sure what it is. So people would highlight it. And obviously that rule of three is peers support, but also then rule of one as player, we develop a culture where if a player isn't feeling it, they don't hide it. They reach out to somebody because there's someone in that organization that they feel comfortable with, they can, and then go, look, I'm not agreeing with this, or I'm underperforming, I don't know why, or actually I think this would be a better way, then you can have a dialogue. So I think that's part of building that culture massively, but making sure when you go into pressure situations, we're again repeating, nothing changes. In fact, we need to even tighter now within these moments.
I think also, there is work to be done there prior to that, Simon, because again, if you're doing this well, you prepare for these scenarios. So, Mark, you're right. I've not encountered somebody that's been outwardly that way, but Mark's absolutely right. I've definitely coached teams down through the years that it's been going on. They've kept it inside, but they've disconnected from the team, and you can feel the mood change, but there's nothing overt. So, if you want to, you can hide from that. You can run away from that as a coach because it's a silent killer. It's not obvious to everybody. And you know what? It's 2 weeks European Championship. Boom, we're finished in 2 weeks. You can run away from that. But if you're coaching through a place of care, which I pride myself on, and you notice this. The first part is noticing. We notice it. And I feel, actually, do you know what? This coach or this member of staff has a better relationship with that player than me. I'm going to lean on them to see, can they connect with that player to find out what's going on. But I'm going to intentionally go about setting that up. So I will go to Simon and go, Simon, I've noticed Mark is not himself. He's disconnecting. He's not communicating with me well. I'm noticing all these different things. Can you find time to sit down and see what you can get out of this? The other thing I do a lot now, Simon, with the national team, which you introduced me to 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, was the change curve and the dip.
Yeah.
I educate them around the change curve and the changes they'll go through in this environment, which are very different to their domestic environments. How they came into this national. I do it every year. I did it 2 weeks ago with this new group. And I showed them a picture of it. And it's about, you came in here so optimistic. You're full of optimism. You're going to make the team. You're going to go to the European Championship. You're going to be awesome. You're going to get scouted by University of Michigan and everything's going to be great. That's how you all came into this. And then you start to realize after a couple of training sessions, you might not even make the team. Or you may think the coaches don't like you, or you may think you're not good, whatever. And you start to develop more information about what this experience is like, and you start to come down on the downside of the curve where you're feeling pessimistic. And it may get to a point where you get to the dip of this and you sit in this and you're wondering, I need to get the hell out of here. I don't know if I want to do this. I can't stand the coach, blah, 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 so on, so on, so on. And now the support system that goes with bringing them back up the curve about feeling more optimistic with more realistic information and support and conversations and guidance is a different topic. But introducing them to the change cycle and that dip and the process we're going to go through, where they might find themselves on that at different points in time, and what they can do if they do find themselves on the downward side, what they can do if they do find themselves in the dip, just signposting them. They don't have to come to me as the solution, but signposting them to where they can go in order to manage these moments. You prepare for that. And going back to what Mark said, I've definitely experienced the disconnect and the silence, and because it's not rosy. And there's one other thing that's come to mind. I always talk to them about two sides of the coin. On one side is, yes, it's shiny, it's bright, it's glossy, we're winning, you're feeling good. But there's an inevitable side when you flip that coin, the dirty side shows up. You're injured, you're lacking confidence, coaches are not happy with you, you can't sleep, you don't like the food, so on, so on, so on, and you're having bad feelings. Just understanding that this is what you're signing up for. Some of these things are inevitable, but it's about how we manage them. And again, signposting, letting them know what's available for them to manage these moments. You can preempt the overt behavior, I think, with all that. My concern is you never really know what they're holding on to.
Yeah.
And whether they will, because they have to take a step at it to some degree.
Well, I think Leo the dog has reached informed pessimism and understanding that the walk is delayed here. So I think that's a sign we need to pull this episode together. But Mark, are you sitting on any thoughts that you want to share before we finish?
Yes, and it links into that last element of the conversation is think ahead. Think about where the barriers can be in performance, in state, in interaction, building those funnels so we keep people connected. And when you know those things, raising awareness to everyone involved, the staff, whoever it may be, the athletes. Look, this is what may happen, and they may be self-induced expectations on what they think others expect of them, etc. So keep nailing that, setting up. Says, look, if these things happen, and then set the permissions around there. But part of that is, if people haven't had an experience before, and a European Championships for many of those players and that team, even the coaching team, have never been together on that, is letting them know, look, based on my experience or others, look, this is what could happen, but let's be ready for it. But here's our expectations on if it does, this is what we can do together. And I'm giving you permissions where appropriate to do these things. So we're starting to set up success and eliminating some of the grey where they're second guessing what may happen.
Well, Mark, Alan, thanks for joining me. As always, we've gone through some what-if scenarios based on the concept of permissions there. Hopefully that's, even just verbalizing that, has helped you, Alan, to get your ducks in a row and to feel a little bit better prepared for the tournament. I know you've been in these kind of situations before, but this, I think what we've done here is illustrate an example of this what-if thinking connected to the idea of permissions as part of our planning and preparation can make us better coaches and ultimately lead to better performance.
And importantly, the big takeaway for me, everyone listening, is keep people reconnecting to what you agreed, whether it's before a match or before a meeting. Know when it's appropriate to connect people back into what we agreed to allow them to be successful. Don't just have it as one chat at the beginning of a tournament or whatever it may be, or when things go wrong, now you bring it up. Set up success.
Great. All right, guys. Thanks for joining me. Hey, coaches. I've just done a cold review of episode 5. There's some awesome stuff in there. A lot of what-if scenarios based on the idea of preparing for these scenarios so that you can be your best. You can show up as your best in key moments. I hope we helped Alan. He's just about to head off to the European Championships. So this episode is dropping right before the tournament starts, and we're hoping to bring you more updates from him, Wi-Fi permitting, as the tournament progresses. Before you take off, just a quick reminder, we've got our master classes starting in September in Sheffield. Details have just been finalized now, and then we're looking at Edinburgh in January, and then hopefully Ireland and somewhere down south in England in the new year. So stick with us, and we'll share those details with you as soon as we can. Most importantly, thanks very much for listening to another episode. We appreciate it.